a village, okay? That terrorism stops when the village, okay, decides that it's not going to use that method anymore. Now, the Irish village and the Hamas village and the Al-Qaeda village, they're all different. They have different motivations, different times, different contexts. But that's, to me, when it stopped. Look, you know, for the last 5 years, we were treated to one analysis after another that Palestinians get up in the morning and they just decide they're so desperate they have to blow themselves up. And then there was a ceasefire. And the village said no more. And it basically stopped. So, you know, to me, that's where you got to be looking, you know, for the answer. And I think there was a lot of nonsense that was written before that this was all just totally spontaneous, you know, and yes, there was an element of spontaneity, but there was an element of real tactical, strategic deployment of human beings as cruise missiles. That's what was going on. And when the village concluded that this was terrible for the future of the Palestinians, that the flower of their youth were blowing themselves up, and that they needed to explore another way, it stopped. It may start again tomorrow, but the village is what stopped it, not George Bush, not Israel, not anybody else.
In this country, you know, there's a view, I suppose by some people, that the village is what stopped it, that the fact that suddenly everybody is vigilant, that it's harder to move through an airport, that it's harder for people from the outside to come into this country, that's working. Would you agree with that, Malcolm?
These are all questions that are far outside my comfort zone. I'll make two random observations, neither of which will answer your question. One was, I was walking down Canal Street the other day, and I saw these two guys, panhandlers, and one guy literally said to the other guy, you know, the panhandling, or whatever word he used, has not been nearly as good down here ever since 9/11. And at that moment, I realized it was time for a moratorium on all references to 9/11. Like, it has just become this kind of like, people will justify anything in their lives with respect to this one date. I mean, it's gone crazy. We've got to sort of, so that's random observation number one. Random observation number two is with respect to the terrorist activity. I did a piece for the New Yorker a long time ago where it was about hijacking. And it was really interesting because I did sort of a history of hijacking. If you go back to the late 1960s, there are not dozens, but hundreds of hijackings every year in America and Europe. And they consist of people getting on planes, pulling a gun, the plane landing, or them jumping out in a parachute, and everyone's fine. Then we like lock the kind of little escape hatch underneath, so guys can't jump out anymore in the middle of flights. So then the hijackings get a slightly smaller number, but they get a little more intense. And now there's like, they stop and they have hostage situations on airport runways. If you look at the history of hijacking, what you see over time is the number of hijackings every year gets smaller and smaller, but the intensity, the severity, the violence associated with the hijackings grows and grows and grows and grows. So the movement is a smaller number of higher intensity events. That, to me, is the story of modern terrorist activity. We're going to have but as we crack down, we're going to have fewer acts, but each individual act will be of greater seriousness. That's the world that we're living in. So we're not going to see anything for another 4 or 5 years, but the next one's going to be a big bang. I think that's the way that's what we have to kind of accept.